Okay, so today we're going to continue the pointers, but before this, I want to highlight something that I have just sent to every one of you about the midterm. I see that people are still joining, so maybe I will wait for this for a couple of minutes. Let me copy the message here to make sure we go through it one by one. So in the meantime, while people are joining, I can take a couple of questions if you got any questions. Sure. Wow, that's a lot. I see no questions with the chat. Okay, so maybe I'll start with this one, give more time for people to join. So Lab 2 is due October 23rd, which is not next Friday, the Friday after, because next week is the reading week. The midterm is October 20th. It's the week directly after the reading week on Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. And I will discuss with you now kind of more details. It states here that practice questions are posted in Avenue, but I am going to post them directly after the lecture because I discovered some issue on the PDFs. So directly after the lecture, I will post some practice questions into what we covered so far. For those who, I said this last lecture, but just to make sure, for those who MSAF labs, so we have two parts of labs. So until lab 3, which is the coming lab after lab 2, all are C labs, while the last two labs are Java. So we have two different dates for those MSAF or deadlines for MSAF labs. For C labs that are MSAF, the deadline is November 20th, which is the deadline of the first Java lab, right? While if you MSAF any Java lab, you would have 1 week after the last lab, and then you have to submit by December 11th. Is there any question about any of these points here? So that's clear? Okay, good. So now let's look into the midterm because we have together to kind of make this very clear to make sure it's a smooth and non-stressful experience for every one of you. So maybe before even going into any of these details, so let me make one very important point. So we all know that these are kind of weird times. I also understand that this kind of virtual environment, especially you guys are like second year students, it might not be the best both emotionally and practically, to be honest. And our role here as instructors and professors to make sure we help you as much as we can. So this is what took me too much to try to come up with a midterm environment that I believe it's not stressful, but in the same time it's fair, and we make sure that everyone gets his own like the grades that he deserves, right? So with regard to the midterm itself, don't worry too much. It's basically what we covered on lectures and in labs is what is going to be in the midterm. The practice questions also will help you through the reading week. If you go through them, it will help you kind of also have a taste of what kind of questions they can be asked. As I said before, the midterm questions are all about coding. This is a programming course. I don't like to ask any theoretical questions. So you will be either writing a code. So I'll ask you, for example, write a function or a program that does A, B, Z, or correct the following code so it contains some mistakes. Sometimes I'll let you know how many problems are existing in the code that you have to find and solve. A third format of a question is to trace a code. So I give you a code snippet and tell you what you expect the output to be, right? So this it's all about coding at the end, right? So okay, there's something with the chat here. Will the midterm be as difficult as labs? So Ishmam, so that's a good point. So first of all, I wouldn't call the labs difficult. What I would say is they require some time. And for some of you, or maybe for most of you, labs are the first real experience doing some kind of serious coding. This is why they might take for some of you some time, but they are meant for exercising. And they have the period of 2 weeks. So we are expecting that you're going to take some time thinking about them, maybe doing something wrong, go to the office hours, ask about some rationale, come up with an algorithm that might work, might not, and then you fix it. So you have the time to do this, right? So both mediums are different. The midterm is an online thing. It has a very limited time, not 2 weeks, just like 1 hour and a half or 1 hour, and you are required to come up with something on the spot. So the medium for testing is different. What we are testing in labs is to give you more time to practice and come up with algorithms yourself. You have enough time to do this, and the more time you invest in the lab, the better. While in the midterm, we are testing you on the fly, knowing you have done the labs. So if you have done the labs yourself and you understand them pretty well, I wouldn't worry too much about the difficulty of the midterm, right? I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I'm saying both are different, right? So I cannot give you a question in the midterm that would take 3 hours as a lab question, right? Because you only have 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. So it's a different medium of testing, right? But knowing the information of the labs, you should be fast enough during this 1 hour and 1 hour and a half. And timing is an important point in programming, right? One advice I would do for, like I have said this before, but one advice I would give for every one of you is before you start even coding, try to come up with an algorithm in your mind. Even scratch this on the side as a pseudocode or flowchart. It will help you organize your mind, right? Okay, good. So one thing that is good about this year that didn't exist before, and I didn't like before, but there was no other way, is that programming midterms and finals, exams in general, were paper and pen, right? But now we have the opportunity to really do programming in programming IDEs or environments, so you can write code. So as I will go with you right now about the midterm environment, so you will be doing it as if you're doing labs in Eclipse. So this is something good. So you are familiar with the environment. You can check whether you are doing a code. Most likely you are not going to do a syntax problem. You are not going to forget a semicolon because Eclipse will complain to you. So you have a way for you to be in a more practical environment rather than writing an exam in a paper and pen, which I didn't like before. And this is something that may be less stressful this year, which is good. So Alireza, is it going to be cover everything we have done so far? Yes, that's correct. Until the end of this week. Usually I had the midterm to cover all the C part because I used to finish structures as well, which is the last lecture before the midterm. But because we are going to cover this on Tuesday morning, which is the exam day, so this wouldn't be included. So we wouldn't have structures in the exam. But until today, which is pointers, finishing the pointer topic, yes, it will be covered. Okay, so let's discuss a little bit the exam environment to make sure you guys get the sense of this. I want all of you to go to the midterm without worrying at all about the environment. So let's make sure it's clear. Let's make sure we can see how we can make sure it's, in the meantime, before the midterm, if there is any issue, we can solve it. So I'm going through the email that I sent to every one of you, and please ask directly if you have any questions. So as I said before, I've tried multiple options. I think using GitHub Classroom, the environment that you are familiar with, is maybe the best for all of you. So as an experimental thing, so we have created another assignment link, which I call midterm, and I sent the link, we will see the link in next slide, and I sent to every one of you. So what you should be doing is the following. You should accept the invitation as if you are accepting any invitation for a lab. So you just click the link, it will create the repo for you. Once you create the repo, do this as soon as possible, maybe by today. And then I will discuss two different things. What would happen during the midterm time, and what we need to do in the meantime before the midterm to make sure there is no issue during the midterm time. So what happens during the midterm time is, today, for example, accept the invitation as soon as possible. So you will go to the midterm time, and while you have the repo, either you get the clone or at least you have the repo created in your GitHub account. Before the midterm, directly, I'm going to push the midterm questions into every one of you. The midterm will be randomized, so every one of you would have a unique version of the exam. It's not common with anyone else. And the questions will be in the form of, either I will send you a PDF or some kind of files for questions similar to what we do for the lab, question 1, question 2, question 3 to see, for example, or both. Most likely I'm going to do both to make it easier for you. Have the PDF that has all the questions to make sure you can follow which one you are in right now, and the files for the questions themselves to make sure you have the start code. But anyway, you would have the midterm in your repo. You do the clone or the poll at the beginning of the exam. So that means you have your questions. You start answering them in your IGE as you do for any lab. And then I'm asking you every 15 minutes. So let's go to the next slide here. I'm asking you every 15 minutes. And after you finish any question is to do a commit and push. Why this is very important? It's very important because, first of all, if you get connection lost or if you have any issue with your repo, this can be addressed as soon as possible, and at least any update you have made so far will be reflecting in your GitHub account. Good. So you wouldn't be losing any answers you have done before. So every 15 minutes, or after finishing every question, you do a commit and push. Couple of lines that would take like 5 seconds from you. And you are all familiar with this right now, given our lab experience. Great. The thing here is that if you don't do this, when we grade your exam and we find that you don't do this, you are going to be subject to a penalty or losing grades, right? Because this is a matter of tracking your progress while you are trying to answer your questions. Waiting for the last 5 minutes, push everything, is an indication that maybe you weren't answering this during the 1 hour, and then you're going to lose grades for that. Good. Then during the midterm time itself, we will all be online as an instructor and TAs. We'll be using the TA office hours Zoom link to make sure if there is any issue, if there is anything. Hopefully by the midterm time we wouldn't have any issue, but just to make sure, we'll be online for asking questions. Okay, perfect. This is during the midterm time. I will take questions and then we'll see what we can do from now until the midterm time to make sure that things are clear. Is it going to cover everything? Yeah, okay. Are there BART marks? Yes, for sure, Sandy. There are BART marks. I mean, this is not a final mark exam. It's not that if you didn't get the question correctly, you get 0. It's not true or false, right? Any effort you do in answering any question towards the correct answer is going to be marked. And the questions are crafted in a way that they are including multiple steps. So if you went through some of them, you would get partial grades for sure. One thing that usually students fail to do, and I emphasize that you have to make sure of, is even if you don't know the answer of the question, try to write your logic. Try to say, okay, I'm going to do step 1, 2, 3, 4 in this kind of format, and the closer you are to the correct answer, the better it is. So if you know the algorithm, but you forgot, for example, one name of a function that you need to use, great, no problem, because syntax is the least important thing in this exam, right? Abdul Monim, it's not an open book. This is not an open book exam. There is no way you can do an open book exam for programming. Is this going to be posted as an announcement? Yeah, Salah, I send this to every one of you as an email. I can post the brief as an announcement, but I don't post links, especially for the midterm and labs, through Avenue. So the link will not be there. How we know if there is any update on test? So Jan, how? There will not be any update during the exam itself. All the updates, this is why you have to accept the repo as soon as you can, because directly before the start of the exam, we'll be pushing automatically all the questions to your repo. And what you need to do at the beginning, it's like you go to the exam room, you write your name in the first paper. What you should do in this new wallet is you do a poll and or clone. So this will reflect directly to you. It will give you all the questions. Ian, if we don't have lots of time, should we prioritize comments, finishing the questions? Oh, for sure, finishing the questions, Ian, not comments. Zain, how many questions will be on the midterm? So it's the midterm is 1 to 1 hour and a half. So you should expect, I don't have the exact number for now, to be honest, but 3, 4 maybe. And it's not in the number of, I can give you a single question, but it should take 3 hours, or I can give you 10 questions that everyone takes 5 minutes. So the number would really matter, but maybe I will post this information once I have it ready. I click the link on the email and it said GitHub refused to connect. You might have a, oh, you guys might have a connection problem then, because this is not even an Eclipse thing. You should just accept stuff, but maybe we can look into this. I guess sometimes Explorer Boxy Explorer can cause an issue. Okay, so if there is no other question about during the midterm time, let's discuss together. What we need to do until the midterm to make sure things work correctly. So what we want to do is, the first step was to accept this invitation as soon as possible to make sure everything is okay. If there is an issue, it's solved. The second thing is, I'm going to emulate what is going to happen in the midterm for every one of you. By once you accept the invitation and create your repo, I'm going to post a dummy question or a practice question, something that is not included in the midterm marks, but something that will reflect on what I will do by pushing changes to your own repo. And you should clone this into your own Eclipse ID, similar to what you do in labs, once you find this question in your GitHub account. By doing this, this is exactly what you want to do in the midterm. So it's an exercise for you. You accepted the invitation. Sometime next week, maybe Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to post this dummy question. You accept it. Maybe you try to solve it and try to push. By doing this, this is all what you need to do. Just 3 things. Accepting the invitation, straightforward. My side is I'm going to push a question to you, to your repo. And then afterwards, you clone this or bullet, write the answer, push, you are done, right? By doing this, you are sure that there is no problem in any of the process that you need to do. Can you clone by using git clone? Yes, Aaron, for sure. All the midterm will be on Eclipse. Yes, I would like to unify the environment. So yes, it will be on. Even if I ask you to trace the program or what is the output of the program, I will try to do this in a form of a programming code. So even if it doesn't compile in Eclipse, it's no issue. I will still see it, right? Is there a finalized date for the mock midterm? So Haron, this is not going to be an online mock, in the sense that I don't want all of you to be existing online during a certain time. It will be done individually for every one of you, but it will happen during next week, maybe as a deadline by Tuesday next week, to make sure if there is an issue we can solve. Aaron, is it okay if we don't use Eclipse and still do the exam? For sure, Aaron. That's for the exam environment, it's more of the GitHub thing rather than Eclipse. In our end, we might even not use Eclipse. We have all our automated scripts to run things. So as far as your question answers are correct and as instructed, there is no issue. From our end, we really don't have even a way to say whether you used Eclipse or not. Is this process clear, guys? Please ask any question. If I would spend even the full lecture discussing this if you have questions, because this is very important. I would like to make sure that everyone knows what he should do, what are the steps, if there is any problem, or if there is something that is not clear, right? So please ask. So the start time, you type git poll. Yes, if you clone, Tony call, you either type a git poll if you already cloned the repo before, which I advise to do, or if this is the first time you are cloning or importing the project, as if you do in any lab, then you just can do import from git, and then this will do the clone for you. So either this or this would work. Elizabeth, do we need to comment for each question? If you mean comment as writing comments in the code, then This is not necessary, but it would be helpful to make sure. So it's in your interest to make whoever is grading your question comfortable understanding what you want to do. If you mean by commit, which might be what you meant, Elizabeth, is like committing and pushing into the repo, then yes, as I was stating, you have to commit and push every 15 minutes and after the answer of every question. Katie, to poll, you have to use CD and your folder first. Yes, Katie, you have to go to the folder where you cloned your repo. That's correct. Will there be test cases? No, there will not be test cases to add, Ian. This is just an exam, not for the lab environment. So all the test cases we would have at our end. Don't worry about test cases for now. Trini, how do we do the exam without using Eclipse? Do we just type the code right into GitHub? As I was saying, you would use the Eclipse. So you are really recommended to use the same environment you are familiar with, which is Eclipse. I guess what confused you, Trini, is Aaron's question. I guess he is using a different environment than Eclipse. That's okay. As I said, that's okay. But the preferred one is Eclipse. So if you are familiar with Eclipse, you do this in labs, which we highly recommend, is then stick to Eclipse. If I clone after the change on the GitHub, so I don't need to get bold. That's correct, Rookie. But if you clone and then do a poll and tell you everything is up to date, that's also okay. So when you push the questions to us, we could just use the normal steps for labs to clone the repo. That's correct, Vito. Yeah. So the main rationale behind using this is an environment that you guys are familiar with and you have used at least now for 3 times through the lab 0 to lab 2, or even 2 times if you didn't do lab 2 yet, right? Which means you are really familiar with. It's exactly the same step. Jumbo, do we access the assignment at the midterm time? You will not have your exam in your assignment. So what I'm saying is accept the invitation now, Jumbo. But you will not have the real questions of the midterm until the start of the midterm time. But as I said, next week I'm going to push a dummy question or a dummy midterm to make sure that you can check your process internally. How can you undo a poll after? By just cloning, and you go to like in Eclipse, Salah, and then you do CD into the folder that you have your repo, and then you do a get poll, then it will tell you everything is up to date. Yeah. Sagnan, so we are not given any test cases to check our answer. Yes, Sagnan, there will not be any test cases for the midterm. Yeah. Okay, good. Perfect. So another question, is there any extra time allotted for any errors that might occur in the environment? So the midterm time allocated for us is 2 hours. I will do it as less than 2 hours, 1 hour and a half, or 1 hour and 15 minutes maybe, to make sure if there are any kind of issues we can solve. But as I said in the email, it's your responsibility to make sure you follow all the steps before the start of the midterm, including cloning the dummy question, trying to answer it and push it. If you do this, I guarantee you by 99%, you will not find any problem during the midterm time. The only problems that might arise is you have an internet issue or you have a problem that you change something on the repo, these kind of things. But these kind of things are rare. So I would say we are avoiding most of them by doing the mocking question in the GitHub. Yolanda, was there something about the mock midterm and dummy questions? Yes, Yolanda, if you look into my email and what I was discussing maybe 15 minutes ago, is I'm suggesting and recommending you accept the invitation of the midterm repo as soon as possible, as you do in any lab, maybe by today. During next week, Monday, latest is Tuesday, I'm going to push into your repo, every one of you, a mock question. And then what you do afterwards is you clone and you try to answer and push it to make sure that this is the process you need to do in the midterm. So we won't see pass-fail results. That's correct, Ian, because there will not be test cases. Vector, do we just import the code normally like for the labs and then get poll before the midterm? Yes, Vector, that's correct. Boxy, so we do get poll after every get push. I'm still confused. No, Boxy, so normally you don't do a get poll directly after. Oh, push. So you only do a get poll once at the beginning of the midterm time, or you do a clone. Both would work, right? after git push, you are done. You don't need to do a boll because we are not going to make any change to repo during the exam time. You are the only one who is going to be pushing things. So you don't need to do a boll every 10 minutes or so. What I'm saying is at the beginning of the exam, do the boll once, or the cloning or the importing of the project, and that's it. So we do git pull from the Eclipse terminal. Yes, or just import the project Muaz. This would also work. Thank you. Guys, it's exactly as the lab environment, right? I'm just trying to explain what you would do in the lab environment, right? How long period should we clone the midterm repo before the midterm start? It's at the beginning of the midterm start. If you are asking about the actual midterm questions, because I will not post them before, but so I will let you know, guys. Like I will be in the TA office hours link, and I will be there with the video. I will instruct every one of you that we started the midterm time now. Everyone has everything pushed, and you start, right? If you are asking about the mocking midterm or the dummy question to try things up and make sure everything is running okay, this would happen during next week, maybe Tuesday. What is lab 2 invitation link? Ahmed, all the lab invitation links are in the lab document itself, right? So lab 2 invitation is in lab 2, lab 1 invitation is lab 1. So yeah. Yes, Salah, that's correct. You can clone the repo now and then do the poll to reflect the stuff. Also, I do need to do the cd command to reach the file. That's correct. Vinay, could you import this? Could you import this week and then be able to pull on only the change? Yes, that's correct, Vinay. This is exactly a Salah question. That's correct. So you either clone now and then do the pull whenever a change happens, or you do the importing at the beginning of the midterm. I would highly recommend that you do the importing as soon as possible and then only do a poll because maybe it's faster, but you are saving a minute or so, so it's also not a big deal. And to make sure no stress is put on you guys from this kind of environment thing, make sure that those kind of things at the beginning, like the 5 minutes or whatever you're going to take to clone things, are already factored in the exam time. Okay. Could you import this week and then be okay? Alan, how will BART marks be given? Will comments be given marks if the code syntax itself is not successful? So the BART marks will be given based on your logic of the code. Or if you are writing, for example, assume you are asked to write a program that implements something of an algorithm that has 5-6 steps, and you implement 3 steps correctly, but from step 4 you started like rambling around, right? Then the first 3 steps you will get the partial marks for them. The remaining ones, based on how far or close you are to the correct answer, you will be getting partial marks as well. Event line. Is it normal to see invitation not found after I accept the invitation for midterm 1 and click on the link? So as far as sometimes I see this recently in GitHub Classroom, but once you accept the invitation and the repo is created and you see the repo, then that's it. You don't need to care about anything else, right? So as far as the repo is created, similar to other labs, you have this slash your username and then like Venus Lab courses and then your username and then the name of the assignment, then you are done, right? Okay, good. So let's jump into hypothetical question. Actually, okay, what would you do if our internet dies or accident did something with the environment, making us unable to complete the exam? Okay, so with regard to this, it's again your responsibility to make sure you have a stable internet connection before the midterm. Yes, you might lose connectivity for some time, but losing the connectivity for the full exam period is kind of weird. And I guess you have to take an action to make sure this doesn't happen. The GitHub environment itself would have a dedicated deadline for the midterm, which is at the end of the time of the midterm. But I'm going to give some room of few minutes to make sure those who are pushing it goes okay. But make sure you, once I say like the exam time is done, you should push as soon as possible to avoid any problems. Sometimes there is issues importing assignments. So if we get an issue importing, can we email you? So Muaz, this is the purpose of doing this mocking question, right? Which is during next week, I will push into your repo a dummy question. You try to import it. If it works fine, then it's 100% going to work fine during the midterm, right? If you face any issue, then we have enough time to investigate this before the midterm. Good. Okay, so I will start now because it's we took already half an hour from the lecture. That's okay. But that's something that is very important to clarify. So if you guys got any other questions, also email me or feel free to yeah, I guess next week is reading week, so there are no office hours, but just email me. This would be okay, and if we need, I can even meet with you to see if there is a bigger problem. Good. So today we're going to build on what we discussed in the last two lectures of discussing pointers. And if you look into this, this is not new information at all. So there is no new theoretical information. We're just putting pieces together. We discussed arrays alone. We discussed pointers, and we discussed that pointers are addressees for another variables. And we also know that pointers are variables themselves. So putting all these three pieces together, we will see how you can have a pointer to a pointer or arrays of pointers. Because if a pointer is just a type, why I cannot have an array of them, right? So in C programming terminology, this is called array of pointers or simply pointer array. How to do this? Similar to defining a normal array where you define the type and then the name of the array and the size. For example, this is float or int or whatever. You just put the type as your pointer definition. Good. So this allocates an array of 3 pointers. What would happen in the memory is you would create this thing, and every element of the array would be a pointer of its own, right? Then later, if I define 3 different arrays, this is just normal arrays we have seen before, A, B, C. A would have 1, 2, B would have 3 to 6, and C would have 7 to 9. Now I'm creating 3 arrays in memory, all of our type int. You can now kind of expect of what we can do. I can make the first pointer point to array A. This is what would happen. Second pointer point to B, and third pointer point to C. All these 3 steps we have seen before, except maybe defining an array of pointer, but every one of them is just a normal pointer that can point to an array. We have seen this last lecture, and we are just putting all of this into one array for now. Good. So looking into this, what if I want to access now these elements? The simplest thing is to access them using, so remember, A is also pointing to the first element here, B is pointing here, and C is pointing here. The simplest thing to access the second element in A is just say A1, right? We are familiar with this. But what if I want to access this through the pointer? Last lecture, if we said there is a B here, I can also say B1, correct? Or do a dereferencing for like this thing, B plus 1, right? We have seen this in the last lecture. The only change, the only tweak now is this B is just not a simple B, it's an entry in an array itself, right? So if I want to access B1, the way I would write it is to say, what is the name of the pointer? It's BB0. Now 1. So it's like a 2D array, right? The first one is the pointer itself. The second one is just the first element here, right? You see that? So if I just say I want to refer to element AJ in the array J, I would just write BB0, which is taking me to the first pointer, which is pointing to A, and then add the subscript or the index of A. The same thing if I'm doing this for B. It would be BB1 because BB1 is the pointer pointing to B, and then index J. And then lastly, the same thing for C. Let me see if there are questions here. Okay. Okay, perfect. So now, remembering the 4 different ways we said we can do to access an element in an array, I can also do the similar thing. A1 is just the normal way of the array. BB01 is using the pointer or doing the dereferencing itself. How I would do the dereferencing, similar to this one, but now B is replaced by BB0 because it's the first element in the array. So this is equivalent to this, equivalent to this. Good. The same thing if I want to access certain element in B or in C, right? Perfect. Continuing with the same example, so let's see what we can, we are just defining it in a different way. Here we define the 3 arrays separately, and then I made every single one of these point to the array name. What I can do instead is I can initialize my pointer array by saying A, B, C, right? Doing this would also make, so let's just forget about this for now, would also say BB0 is A, BB1 is B, and BB2 is C. So this is completely equivalent to the last slide, but the difference is I'm doing the declaration and the initialization in the same line. Good. Remember, we also said it's not a good idea to use pointers to initialize arrays. So it will give you a syntax error, right? So the same thing applies for arrays of pointer. You cannot just simply say, I know that A has 1 and 2, so I'm going to replace this with 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, 8, 9. Can someone remind me why this is giving a syntax error? We have said this reason when we discussed why it's not a good idea to use the pointer to initialize an array. They don't have address. Okay, it's I see what you mean, Nicole. You are correct, but we might just say it in a more clear way or in a different way. Not enough memory. That's correct, Gutong. So simply by just defining this, you are declaring. By just defining this, you are declaring this place in memory, right? Which is saying, define to me 3 places in memory. Each one of them is going to hold a pointer value, which is, for example, if you have 32 bits, these are 4 bytes. But you have no place at all for creating this. So the memory is not allocated, so you can just initialize it, right? Good. So one extra step, we always do this. We discuss arrays and then we say, what about strings? Because strings are special arrays of characters, right? Can I define arrays of strings using pointers? So let's see. Last lecture also we discussed this, how to define a string using pointer as an array of character. Now arrays of strings would be like 2D arrays because the string itself is an array of its own, right? So you can do this by saying I'm defining a pointer of arrays of type character, and then every one of them is going to point to something like this array. How I would do this? First of all, we have 4 elements of pointers, so 4 pointers, and every one is going to point to a different array, which is, oh, I got unstable, so I might get disconnected. You guys lost me for some time. Am I back now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, 2 seconds. Thanks. Thank you. So what I was saying is, we know that strings themselves are arrays of characters. So this is why we have these 4 arrays here. Each one of this is representing a character array that is ended up by the null pointer, by the null character. And by just writing this statement, I'm defining 4 pointers of type character. Every one of them is going to point to one of these. So the first one is pointing to the first letter, which is M, 2, 2, 1. Good. Now assume I want to do some kind of operation or like an algorithm on this. For example, exchange or interchange 2 strings. Let's say, for example, I want to change or exchange this one with this one. What I would do is simply, okay, let me see if there are questions. Isn't this defining an array while defining pointers? It's defining an array of pointers, Salah. So it's here what I'm doing is, this is saying this is a pointer array of type character, right? So this is defining the pointer array itself, right? So can someone suggest how can I, what is the easiest way to just exchange these two, to interchange them? This will show the benefit of pointers, is how to simply just change 2 things. Using a temp pointer, casting. Yes, I need a temp pointer, that's correct. But what would be, like how I would just simply do it? Why doesn't this give the same problem as the last example? Why yeah, Katie. So in the last thing, that's a good point. So here, remember last time we discussed that you are not allowed to use pointers to define and initialize arrays except for strings, which will be in the read-only memory. Remember we discussed this. So for strings, they are allowed. This is the reason why you can do this now. but every one of this would be in the read-only memory, so you'll not be allowed to change. For example, you cannot change A to something, but you can move them around. So assume I want to change to SH4 and to SI4. What I would simply do is just exchange these 2 pointers, right? So what I would say is, I know that this one is pointing into to SI4, this one is pointing to SH4. So what I would do is take this into a pointer, put it into the which one okay, I'm exchanging to SH with 1D, doesn't really matter, and then make this one point to this one, right, through the temp. By just doing this, we change their order in the the pointer array, right, which means now 1D4 comes first before 2SH, right? You can make S array 1 point to SI4. Yeah, this is exactly what we are doing, Danny. Yeah, thank you. Good. And we're using a function called swap. Something I want to explain to you here is why we have these two. This is the first time we see this. We have two asterisks, not just one. What does it mean? What I need to pass here, that's something that is important to discuss. If I'm exchanging these, that means I need to pass S array for the first one. I need to pass S array 1. And for the second one, I need to pass S array 3. What does S array 1 represent? I know that S array 1 is a pointer, right? Because I initialized the pointer here. But I know that S array 1 is a pointer that is pointing to what? It's pointing to another pointer, right? Because the whole array has a pointer itself, right? So it's like a double pointer, or what we call a pointer to a pointer, right? So the way, so what did, the way we understand pointers or double pointers, but let me first, there are questions here. Oh, come on, today is a very interesting day. So you guys hear me now? We are good now. Okay, I'm not sure how much you lost, but that's okay. I was going to kind of discuss the double pointer anyway with another example. So if you lost anything, you really didn't lose much. So what I was saying is that here, if you have a pointer to a pointer, because S array is a pointer and it's pointing to an array itself, which is a pointer, this is called double pointer, right? So some of you asked today about this in the tutorial, and we said we are going to discuss double pointers today. So this is the time to discuss double pointers. What is the main idea behind double pointers? First, we know that a pointer is holding an address to another variable. So if I define an int variable called n, and this is a pointer of type int, then the address, let's say this is the address of n, f, I'm going to hold the address here, right? But we know also that the pointer itself is a variable on its own, right? It has the value of an address, but still a variable, which means I can define another pointer, pointer 2, that just holds the address of this pointer. And in this case, I can call pointer to a double pointer, correct? Double pointer is not, actually, double pointer is not the pointer that is pointing to a double. It's a terminology means a pointer that is pointing to another pointer, correct? Yes, Nicholas, that's correct. So that double asterisk means you have a pointer, like pointer 2 here, that is pointing to a pointer that is pointing to an int, right? And we will have more examples like this now, right? Good. So what we are saying here is we know that the name of the pointer array, like the array itself, the array name itself is a pointer to the first element, right? So by defining a pointer of an array or array of pointers, the name is going to represent the address of the first element. This is the rule that we all know. The array name is holding the address of the first element. But what is the first element in this case? It's a pointer, right? Which means BB is holding the address of a pointer. In other words, BB is a double pointer, right? Good. Which means it's a pointer that is pointing to another pointer that is pointing to an int, right? Good. Two pointers that points to the same thing. No, Sarah, that's different. Two pointers that are pointing to an int, like what we have seen today in the tutorial, both of them is a single pointer because it only points to an int. A double pointer, on the other hand, we'll have more examples now for those who are confused, but simply a double pointer is nothing other than a pointer where the address that it holds includes another pointer. So it's like a chain, right? What is the double pointer? We will come. So okay. So I will hold on the remaining two questions because we will find their answers now, right? So a double pointer again is a pointer to a pointer. The way we would do this is, so far we don't have any double pointer. We have the normal thing that we know. You define an int, you give it an initial value of 100, and then you make a pointer that is pointing into it. Simply, this is this. You defined A, it has this address. By defining the pointer to hold the address of A, you just copy the address here, correct? And then you make it point to the value of A. So far, so good, what we have done in the last 3 lectures. Then, what if I want another pointer that points to B itself, which means take the address of B. Now I need to define it as a double pointer. Good. So the way this will happen is you define BB as a double pointer. It would have the address of the first pointer. This is why it's called double, because it holds the address of the pointer. So it's pointing, if you look into this, the double word came from the sense that you are pointing to an address that points to another thing. Good. This creates all kinds of possibilities, right? If I want to dereference B, dereferencing B is giving me A, so it's equivalent to 100. Dereferencing BB, on the other hand, is going to give me B itself, which is the address of A, right? In this case, it's 0x22AA00. Double dereferencing B, as you can imagine, is equivalent to dereferencing B twice. In the first dereferencing, it's giving me B, like what we have said here. In the second dereferencing, it gives me A, right? Now, let me see if there are questions. Do you get syntax if you instead defined it as int B? Oh, yes, definitely, Ian. That's a good question. If you didn't define this as a double pointer, so let's see why. That's a good question that is important to discuss now. So what Ian is saying is, if I just define this as the following, and I have done this, would this be legal? For sure, no. Why? Simply because of the rule we said before, is the type you put here is the type of the variable that the pointer is pointing to. By defining it like this, you're saying BB is going to point to an int. But on the other hand, you make it point to a different type, which is a pointer. How can I understand this given what we discussed so far? You can also understand, you look into it from a different point of view, which is, you know that BB need the type of what is going to point to. In this case, it's pointing to a pointer of type int, right? Because the rule we mentioned about defining the type pointer is you need to declare the type that the pointer is pointing to, and in this case, it has to be a pointer, which is the first asterisk, right? This is why we need double asterisk for the 2 pointer, right? Or for the double pointer. Is that clear now? Okay, good. So some examples. This is going back to what we have done before. BB is a double pointer that holds the address of the first element. Every one of these array of pointers is pointing to another array. We know that BB is holding the address of B0. That means now if I dereference BB, it gives me B0, which in itself has the address of A, right? This is A, this is B, and this is C, right? And then double dereferencing B is going to dereference BB0, which is going to give you A0, right? A similar thing, if I want to access BBIJ, it's like saying BBij is going to go somewhere here. So like saying, for, let's see if there is an example. So if I'm going to say BB01, what is this is giving us? BB0 is this one. 1 is the first element, which is equivalent to say I'm doing BB0, which is giving me the pointer, and then doing pointer arithmetic and then dereferencing, which is also giving you 1. Then this is also equivalent to say, I know that BB is a double pointer. I'm adding into it I, which is the first one, in this case is 0, dereference it, which is giving me B0, add 1 into it, and then do the dereferencing. All of this is going to give you 1. If the last one is not clear, because you might get questions about it, let me say it again. Take it a step by step. BB is what? Is the address of the first element. Adding 0 into it, it would still be the address of the first element. Doing dereferencing for it is going to give you BB0. Add 1 into it is going to give you B001, and then dereference it is going to give you 1. Let me see if there are questions. So if BB is n type, how BB cannot be of n type. BB is a pointer, so it's a pointer type of a pointer, right? But the other pointer that B is pointing to is of type int, right? Give 2. Yeah, it should give you. Oh, I'm mistaken. Sorry for this. You are correct, Nicole. Thank you so much. It gives 2 because I used 1 instead of 0. That's correct. Yes, Karina as well. That gives you. Thank you. That's correct. Good. So knowing this, let's complicate it a little bit more, but let me see how much time we have left. Oh, we are already done. And this was going to take some time. So I guess maybe you guys are lucky a little bit, because now dynamic memory allocation using double pointers cannot be part of the exam. So we'll stop here. I would wait for quite some. I would wait for quite a few minutes to take questions. Okay. So if you got questions, please ask. So midterm is up until the last slide. That's correct. That's correct. Are there any other question? You guys are all clear about the midterm process? When is the midterm again, Adam? Thank you for the question. So the midterm is October 20th. I have this in the first slide, and we also have a separate announcement for the midterm date. Good. Could it be considered as a 2D array? Yes, Yolanda, it's a 2D array, and what we were going to discuss next was exactly this. So that's a good catch. Thank you. What slide is this? I'm going to Nicole, I always would like to make things clear. So I'm going to post an announcement about what is the last slide, especially for those that weren't in the lecture that we stopped at. So don't worry about this. You're welcome, Adam. Ishmam, can you come onto a meeting if we are having extreme trouble with lab 2 or midterm link? Yes, I can do this next week for sure. It's my pleasure. When are the experimental tests going to be uploaded? Monday, latest Tuesday. So right now I can import the midterm as if I'm importing a lab. Then when you push something, I just use the pull. Exactly, Salah, that's correct. You are welcome, Sandy. Thank you. So yeah, everyone have a good week and a good long weekend, and all the best with your exams. We all know that it's a little bit tough times, so I wish you all the best. Will you upload the video today? Yes. And just make sure, do you need to get a git pull at first, at the beginning of the exam? That's correct, Zanha. Sarah, will there still be lab next week or no? Because no, there are no labs next week. Thanks everyone, all the best. So So one thing I mentioned at the beginning, and maybe most of you weren't there, is I'm going to post practice questions as well on Avenue today for all the parts we covered so far, including pointers. It would be a good exercise for everyone. And this includes what we have done in the tutorial today. I have just a quick question. What about why the class teach C and Java instead of C++? Aaron, that's an excellent question. So I have the same question. We are towards changing this completely. So we kind of created a move towards this. You just need to understand that things take some time to change in a university. I have submitted a proposal for this sometime early this year, and is going to be applied hopefully starting next year. We are making changes into the curriculum, including introducing other algorithms course, things that are making it better for you guys, hopefully. And this is one of the things. So I'm not saying I don't agree with you. I fully agree with you, but things take time to change, and the change is coming. Actually, everyone, Calco is easy. Just manage time. Okay, you guys, I guess talking about exams. Adam is still. I still can't get Bush. I haven't been copying and pasting the raw code into GitHub. Will that be an issue for the midterm? I'm not sure what you mean by not getting Git Bush, Adam, but if you cannot Bush, that's a big trouble, and you have to make sure you can Bush. And if you still face the problem, please send me an email and we can arrange a meeting. If the repo created and you cloned it into your Eclipse, how did you submit lab 1 then, or lab 0? You must have Bush
So Dr.
something.
Hassan, yeah, actually, so do you remember we worked together for approximately an hour to two, but prior to that, I was
I got
PA,
it. This was
and
for lab 0, correct?
I've already uninstalled Visual Studio and I've deleted my account, and I'm still having the same problem. So I don't like I've been copying the raw code, and I know you said to use that as last priority or last step.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know what to do because I've spent another additional 3 hours after my meeting with you
Sure.
to figure it out. I still can't figure it out.
Yeah,
Maybe I should take this
yeah.
offline and I'll email you.
Yeah, did you? You didn't email me, right? Because I thought in lab
No, I,
1
I, I
you
haven't.
figured it out. Yeah.
No, I thought I could figure it out, but I didn't want to. How about I take this offline and I'll email you again?
Sure, I really appreciate this. We should work on this together. I want to make sure you get this solved, because you need this
Okay.
for the midterm and for the remaining labs as well. So let's make sure
Okay.
it works. Yeah. Now I remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Hassan. I'll shoot you an email. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
I think what he should do is just like not use Eclipse, or like use like a text editor, and then I don't know, like
yeah, and we tried not using Eclipse, and we tried to use Git like from bare command line.
yeah.
I guess what Adam had is a problem. He had a previous account that was somehow registered in the registry of Windows, and Git is always knowing this account, so it's not allowing him to push into the repo because it was a private repo that only allows you to push using the correct credentials, right? So I don't think it's an Eclipse issue, but I can if you can help him, this would be really appreciated. And I once he emails me, Adam, I would be more than happy to help you with that. So lab section next week. Yeah, now there are no lab sections next week because it's a reading week. But if you got questions, we can arrange a time to have office hours together. Okay, so no more questions, guys. Okay, all the best then. Enjoy your long weekend, and all the best with your exams. See you all. Again, please make sure that you do the dummy test once I push on Monday or Tuesday, and if you got any issue, we can allocate a time to solve. All the best. Bye-bye.